welcome back. It's time to bend the sides, but before we do that, which I think will be in the next video, there is a little bit to talk about. We've got some prep to do. We've got a little bit of sawing, we've got a little bit of planing, but the thing I want to talk about most of all is book matching. I've got a few books on guitar construction, and book matching, despite the name, is something that's glossed over in some of the books, and I think it's quite important. So let's just make sure we understand what we mean by book matching, shall we? These are my templates. These represent the shape of the sides rolled out flat once they're cut to size, but in fact we won't be cutting them to a length initially, but we will be cutting them to width prior to bending. Now, as you can see, they're different sizes, they're different lengths. This is the right hand side of the guitar, so this contains the sort of the drop shoulder, as it were, and has a shorter distance to go than this one, which contains the horn. But they match up at each end, at the tail and at the neck. They're the same depth. But the way I've got them laid here, this curved bit is the back of the guitar, as is this bit with the shape. The back is more domed and it's got a taper on it, whereas the front is much flatter. It isn't completely flat, but we're going to be cutting the sides as if the front is a straight edge, so that we've got a reference edge. So we've got the back there, front of the guitar, there, and this is the tail and this is the neck. But actually what we're looking at are two different sides of the guitar here. This is the inside of the guitar, because this will be curved around this way, whereas this is the outside of the guitar, because this is the front of the guitar. This is going over the shoulder, and it's going to be coming around this way. So in terms of a book match, we're not going to actually have them matched edge to edge like this. We're going to be having them matched edge to edge like that, along the straight edge. But actually, we need to discuss what we mean by book match when it comes to guitar sides. Right, imagine for a moment that these are, perhaps this is the front or back of a guitar, maybe it's the flame maple top of a solid body, and this is our book match, and we've taken a piece of wood, we've taken a plank, we've sawn down the middle of it, and then we've opened the two parts out, and then what we have is our show faces were the two faces that were closest together in the tree originally. Now, the reason we want our show faces to be the ones that were originally closest to each other inside the tree, the inside of the book, is because that gives us the most matched grain pattern. It creates the best mirror image. If we were to have the other faces, so we've book matched like that, and we end up with two faces that were on the further away from each other, the grain pattern will be a little bit more different, and it won't match up precisely. It's very important that we get the show face right, and have the show face as the one that was inside the two pieces. But it's still a slight compromise, because we sawed these probably on a bandsaw. I guess it's possible to do it on a circular saw if you've got a large enough one. And we've had to sand, plane, whatever, to get two nice flat surfaces. There's further sanding happens during the finishing of the guitar. And what we end up with is two faces that were actually perhaps a few millimetres away from each other inside the tree, because there's been some wood on the top here that's been cut away. So the more processing that's been done to the wood, the less matched the grain pattern is. And of course that's what's happened with our sides, because we've sanded away a millimetre or so from each side of the bandsawn wood, so we can't get a perfect book match. Now, so far I've been talking about the book match as if it's a guitar top, but of course it isn't. It's the sides of the guitar, and in practice these two edges, they're never actually going to be seen together. So this form of book match isn't really critical, and of course, more to the point, it's impossible to have a book match up here, because these two edges just don't match. But of course the book match we're really interested in is this one at the end. We need to get two pieces that have effectively done this. And this is quite a critical book match because unlike a side-to-side book match on a guitar top, we've got grain lines going through across the pieces, and if possible we want to get those grain lines matched up. But here's the thing, we're not going to be cutting these pieces to size initially. We can't do that, it's just too risky. We need to leave ourselves some spare at each end for two reasons. We might not be absolutely accurate in terms of the match between the template for the sides and the template for the front. I will check the lengths to see if we're at least within a few millimetres. But we need to allow ourselves some scrap wood at each end because actually these two pieces are curved and it's almost impossible on a bending iron to put a curve right to the edge of the piece. You need to have some extra wood that you can hold against the iron, and that's a question of how much I leave actually. I'll probably leave about that much on each end. So actually we're trying to match two pieces of wood to lines that are actually away from themselves. But of course, as long as we're pretty good with the book match end to end of the rough sawn pieces, then the grain should still match a little bit further away. Because it's the same piece of it's the same piece of grain. The grain there and the grain there were touching in the original tree, but we won't be able to see the precise match until we've cut the sides to length. I hope that makes sense. Let's talk about the practicalities, because we're going to be processing these two pieces of wood down sort of that way together. It's just not practical to consider. It's the only way we can process them because our reference edge is going to be this straight edge here. So what we need to be left with is two pieces of wood where the piece of grain on this edge is the same piece of grain, it was next to this edge in the tree. So when we've cut the sides to width, we want to make sure that we've taken off exactly the same amount of wood from this edge as we have from this edge. So if we start with the rough wood like this, we're going to process the two sides together, so when we trim this edge we're taking exactly the same wood off each side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my walnut sides, I'm going to put them back in their original configuration within the tree. I'm going to establish how much wood I need to take off to get a good reference edge, a nice straight edge, and then I'm going to saw it on the bandsaw and then plane it down with the two pieces of wood together so that we know that when we take them apart and book match them end to end, we end up with the same piece of grain here as here, and the ends should match. Does that make sense? Now here are my actual sides. And the first thing we've got to do is re-establish the book match. Now, I've never been so grateful for a wormhole in my life. This is a positive bonus. Now we can tell from where the wormhole is that clearly the pieces overlapped like this. But the question is, were they that way round or was this piece underneath? Well, the wormhole is at a slight angle. And because we've taken material off both sides of these pieces, the wormhole doesn't line up precisely. If we put the cocktail stick through, we've got a bit of a mismatch here. Whereas if we put them this way, then wormhole's still at an angle, but the cocktail stick goes through nicely and we've got properly matched boards. So that's how they were in the tree, with a little bit of timber taken away from between them, and the book match occurs like that with the matching edges. So this is going to be the show face. We've just got to decide whether we want to unfold it that way or that way. Oh, and incidentally, there's a very slight little blemish just here, and that's going to be on the inside, because we know from the Bookmatch that we've now got these as the outside faces of the guitar. So we've established the way the Bookmatch went. We've got straighter grain on this edge and a little bit wavy over here. So I'm going to use this edge as the straight front of the guitar. So I guess we'll mark on there front. And because we've got better behaved grain up this end, we'll have this as the tail, and this will be the outside, as it's the inside of the Bookmatch. This is our show face. So if I can just put the templates on. We won't be cutting it just yet because we're going to be preparing this edge, but just to illustrate what we've got here, we've got outside, outside, and that's going to be the neck end. So that's going to go there, and that's going to go there. So that's our scheme. So I've established how I'm going to cut it. This is how the templates will come out. So the first job is to take an amount off the front edge after we bring them back into Bookmatch, and we have a slight flaw just here, a little knot, I think, probably a tiny little branch maybe. So we're going to make sure we cut off to there, and then the rest will follow. So what we need to do is bring them back together, tape them together, and then cut that edge off and plane it flat. I've left the guide quite high because otherwise I'm in shadow. This way at least I can see what I'm doing. As an improvised shooting board, I've just clamped a lump of wood to my bench. It's way too hot to be doing this, and the wood's warped, and it was vibrating in the bandsaw because the two pieces weren't together, and I'm getting sweat on the wood, and all in all I'm just going to get this straight, and then I'm going to leave it and let the wood relax. This is not very good conditions for doing this. I think that's close enough. Well, I kind of knew I was going to have problems with the wood. It's cooled to 32 degrees centigrade in here. It was 35 when I started, and it's way too hot to be doing this because the moisture in the air, as soon as I put the two pieces of wood together, they cupped because now the moisture's not even on both sides. But I do have a nice reference edge. A nice straight edge, and because of the way I did it, the grain should be identical along this edge, and hence identical down the width, which is the more important thing, because of course we're going to be opening this out that way. and as long as we start the sides the same distance in at the bottom of the guitar, the grain should match straight the way through. I'm hot. I'm going to go cool down. I'm going to drink something nice and cold, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye.